Hey, I'm DaveQ, and today we're going to be working on wiring what's behind me. So the question is, what are these boxes? We're going to go and walk through what they are, and then I'm going to go ahead and get everything wired, and as I do, talk through with you what I am doing. So DaveQ, I'm going to show you how I would wire everything behind me. We're going to have a GFCI here. So we're going to have two different types of wire on two different circuits. One over here is going to be a 12 gauge, and the one over here is going to be a 14 gauge. 14 gauge is what you put on a 15 amp breaker, wire your bedrooms, lights, things like that. And then your 12 gauge is when you know, hey, I'm going to be pulling some more power, so your kitchen outlets, your bathroom. And some people put other outlets, like I have my office on 12 gauge wire for a 20 amp outlet as well. So that way I can plug in some larger computers, things like that. Anyways, so we're going to have a GFCI over here. We're going to have GFCI Protected Outlet here. You'll see those frequently in kitchens, also in garages. So I'm going to show you how I do that and wire it up. On the side over here, we have a GFCI, and that's honestly primarily set up as a on-off for me. Up here, we're going to be starting with, basically, we'll have a three-way switch, and then we'll have a single switch next to it. So the single switch I'm going to have set up for a switched outlet. This outlet right here is going to be set up for a half switched outlet. Going to the switch here, I'm going to show you how I do that. Also, we have a smoke detector. That's going to be hardwired and have constant power. So I'm going to show you how that's set up. Going to this side, we have a light. So this is a light that's going to be on a three-way switch on that side. We're going to have a four-way switch right here in the middle. We're going to have a three-way switch. So if you're ever in a situation where you're like, hey, how do I wire a smoke detector? I'm going to take care of that. How do I wire a three-way switch? Going to take care of that. How do I wire a four-way switch? We're going to take care of that. How do I wire a switched outlet? What is going on with this red wire that's in here with my outlet? And why does my switch seem to do nothing in this old house? Sometimes newer houses. We're going to cover that. So also, how do I not have to put GFCI outlets in every single spot? What does it mean on line load side for the GFCI, and how do I wire that? We're going to take care of that as well. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all these outlets out and switches, and we're going to start by running wire. So whenever I wire a house, I'll just explain the order for you. So hopefully if you're happen to be in a situation where you're doing this yourself, you'll know how I do it, and you can do it the same way if you like. I start with layout. So layout is putting boxes in. I'm not pulling any wire until all of my boxes are in a room. So typically I'm not pulling any wire until all my boxes are just about everywhere in the house. And once I get the initial location for those, we have what are called home runs. So a home run is a wire that goes from the panel to its first location. So typically that home run is going to cover maybe 2 bedrooms. Maybe that home run is going to cover like kitchen A or kitchen B or a microwave. So those would be 3 different circuits. Maybe that home run is going to go to a bathroom and do a bathroom outlet, or that home run could also be going to an oven or locations such as that. So it's basically a wire that goes from the panel that'll be connected to a breaker to one specific location. Anyway, so that's how that's set up. So basically we're going to assume that we have 2 home runs, one to our 14 gauge on a 15 amp breaker. Although we're not going to be doing that, we're going to be plugging it into the wall just so I can just unplug it when I need to disconnect it and disconnect things easily, safely. And the other one over here is going to be our 12 gauge, also going to have a plug on it that we can plug stuff into to power it. So yeah, our 2 circuits are right here. So the first thing we do, like going back to that, the first thing we do is we put our boxes up everywhere. Once the boxes are up everywhere, we want to go start drilling holes. So the next step would be basically drilling all the holes everywhere. So I'm doing, after my boxes are in for my switches, my outlets, my lights, everything else that I'm doing for, need power for, hot water tank, things like that. I'm also going to mark height. So frequently I won't install a box for a hot water tank. I'll just have the wires stubbed out the wall, but I still need to mark the height of it and put hot water on it so I know where I'm running my wire to. So the next step is drilling holes. So now that I have all of my boxes installed, I'm going to drill holes everywhere. On this setup, I don't have to drill any. I typically use a 7/8 drill bit and drill all my holes with that. All right, so this is my 7/8 drill bit. And so this one has a nail biter, I think is what they call it, one of the brands calls it that, head on it. So basically if I happen to hit a nail, it will dull this blade hitting nails, for sure. But if I happen to hit one, I'm like, I just need to go through, I can keep going with this. Ideally, if I notice I'm hitting a nail, I just back it out and drill a hole right next to it, if I have the space. But if I don't have the space, I know I can go through it. I have probably 4 or 5 other drill bits that I use. This is a Diablo one. Brand doesn't really matter to me that much for drill bits. So this one's thicker than your normal one, and because they do sell packs. So this one is about 10 bucks just for this. Use whatever works for you. There's longer drill bits. I use them frequently as well. If all of a sudden I'm going through a bigger hole. If I'm going through 2 or less studs, I'm generally using this. Once I hit more than that, I switch to a different bit. Probably way more than you need to know. We may just run power from one to the next and just jump around. And then we also need switch legs. So a switch leg is a wire that goes from basically where you have power with the switch, and it's the leg that goes to the light or to whatever switched. The wire that goes from that switch to what's switched is called the switch leg. So you have your power sides, your switch legs. You want to label everything outside of the box, not inside of the box, because the moment the wire goes in the side of the box, once all my wires are present in a box, I'm going to strip them. So again, format, boxes, drill holes, everywhere that you need the pathway, so that way when you're running your wire, you're not like, oh man, I need to drill one more hole, and I'm in the middle of running wire. It slows you down. So pull on my wire, and as I put them in the boxes, so I don't land any of my wires in a box until every single wire is there. It may be a little different here because of how close these are. Once all the wires for a specific box are there, then I'm going to land them inside of the box. And I'm going to show you a method that I use, which is basically you can strip all the wires once they're all inside the box, or you can pre-strip them before you shoving them in there by kind of measuring the length of it and then stripping the wire as you shove it into the box. So that's what I like to do if I'm able to. Sometimes I'm not. It's more difficult when you're using a 3-wire versus a 2. So our 2-wire would be like a 12-2, 14-2 with ground. 12-2 has 3 wires, one of them is a ground, and you're like a 14-3 has 4 wires, one of them is a ground. So once the wires are all there, then I go and make up each box individually. So the layout for this video, which probably getting long already, the layout is I'm going to, all my boxes are in, I've drilled all my holes, which I don't need to drill any holes because this is all going to stay here. This is just a 4x7 sheet of plywood. It was 4x8, I cut it. 4x piece of plywood that's sitting off the wall, 1.5 inches so that I could do this demonstration for you. This is not permanent, it's not going to stay here. And I just mounted these 2x4s here so it'd be what I'm typically working with on a wall, be a 2x4 or 2x6 walls. So you get to see what it looks like in the field. And so I'm going to show you how I wire this up. Basically, for the rest of this video, we're going to go ahead and run wire between all these. Hopefully it doesn't take that long. I'm going to go ahead and show you the primary tools that I use to do that. I use these guys right here. So it's Klein tools, and so this has basically a weird thing on the top. It has a cutter for a 12-2 and a 14-2. Cutter for the 12-2 and a 14-2 is if I'm stripping a 12-2 or 14-2 wire, I can lightly crimp down on that and it's going to just cut the sheathing if I do it correctly. Now just a disclaimer, this does not work on older wire because you have the outside sheathing and you have the insulation inside. So basically this is going to cut through the outside sheathing but not the insulation inside. If you're using an old, let's say a 12-2 wire that's white, because it used to be white before that, they have some black, they still have some that's gray. It doesn't work on UF wire, it works on Romex and that's it. So Romex probably made in the last 20 years is what I would recommend, that's yellow. Same with 14 gauge wire that's white. That's what this is going to work on for you. So anything else, I'm using my next tool I got here, which is my box knife. So when I'm running around and I'm wiring, I have my box knife on me. I have my these specific ones with me. I don't use these for making boxes up, but I use them for landing my wires in. Once my wires are all landed in, then I make up the boxes after that. That way, if I happen to be like, oh man, there's something I didn't think of, I need to add one more wire, the box isn't made up, and then I'm having to undo the whole box, redo it again. So run all my wires. Once all my wires are ran, I land them in the boxes. Once they're landed in all my boxes, all of them in that room or whatever area I'm working in, then I make up the boxes. Once the boxes are made up, typically I have my cover inspection, and when the cover inspection is happening, right after that, they're doing insulation, sheetrock. I'm not installing anything until after that's all done. Hopefully that all makes sense. Anything I'm missing? Other tools I take with me while I'm making stuff up, we'll go and show you those. All right, when I'm running wire, I bring this guy with me here and this guy here. Basically, I've had some issues with doing construction for a long time with one of my elbows, which is the one that swings the hammer. And so I try to not overdo it if I can. So I have tools that help me out here and there. So this is a staple gun. This is a Milwaukee. I also have a DeWalt staple gun. And so they both work. This one seems to get them a little bit tighter. It does have its downside, which is the staple slot is about a 1/4 inch or a little more below where the safety thing is. So if I staple it at an angle, I've had the staple go right through my wire, even though the wire is through the safety slot right above it, it'll still hit it. So the DeWalt doesn't do that, and the DeWalt can get at better angles. The DeWalt is not as tight. More information than you need to know, but that's okay. So just some things that if you don't do this all the time, you're not going to know. I put 2 wires under each staple. I don't staple within, I want to say, 1 1/4 inches of the edge of the board, which is, for me, this hammerhead. And so you can run 4 wires down the side here, but basically you kind of move one towards the middle, staple it, and then a little bit below you can move the other one towards the middle and staple it. So that way they're all staying. So if I put my hammerhead here, I don't want it to hit. It can bump the edge of the wire, but I don't want my hammerhead, the side of it, to stick out beyond it. I staple, I think the code is 4.5 feet. I'm basically 3 to 3.5 feet for all my staples. If you're in a situation where you're running through rafters, basically I'm doing every other. Most rafters are 2 feet or less between them. So every 4 feet is going to be a staple. Don't quote me on code. It's up to you to do your own research. I've not had any problems with how I do that, and I've been doing this a long time. The wires stay where they're supposed to be. Once I'm going vertically on a wall, typically I'm doing 3 to 4 feet for every staple, and almost all my staples I'm going to put about 6 inches from the box. I believe the code is 8 for a non-secured connection. These connections are not something that's clamping down on it, so in my opinion it'd be a non-secured connection. If I had a different connection that clamps down the wire, I believe you can do 12. I pretty much am always doing between 6 and 8 inches or less. So for me, that's 6 inches. I measured it from bottom of my hand. So if I stick it right there, that's where I'm throwing my staples right there, is 6 inches. So my recommendation is don't try to cut it close on the edges and see how far you can get to where you're still meeting code. Just throw your staples right around 6 inches. That way it has a nice bend there and you're not too far away. And also, you'll see sometimes if I throw a staple in, which I'm going to nail some of these in because I don't have room for my hand stapler. Even if I use the hand stapler, if it's right next to a box, I'm going to tap it in with my hammer if I don't feel like it's tight enough. Because when I'm making this box up here, I don't want my wire to accidentally get pulled up. Then all of a sudden it's like, now an extra 3 inches of wire because I was trying to pull the sheathing off, and 3 inches of wire came up. Now I have more up there than I need. Now I need to restrip the more sheathing off of it or finagle the wire back down. So if you see me tapping it down on here, that's what I'm doing. So the staple right before the box, I want a little bit tighter. Definitely not tight enough to where it's like really pinching the wire, but just a slight pinch on the sheathing so that that wire isn't getting pulled up. Anyways, Once we're done with running wire to these outside pieces, I'm going to zoom in on the individual boxes as I make them up so that you can see how I'm doing each individual box. Anyways, hopefully this is helpful for you and seeing how I do this. So I'm going to go ahead and get to wiring. There's two ways that I knock out these little pieces in the back. So one way is just to take these at an angle and just jam them in there, which I'm going to do in a moment. The other is, you can take, I guess there's one other way, which is with a flathead screwdriver. The other way is if you take your hammer, you can just hit it in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and do all three ways here, and you can take a look, and maybe that'll be helpful for you. Just like that. We're going to go in here. Go out here. So basically I'm going in and just giving a little twist to knock it out. So I'll just show you the other one here. You can take a flathead and then, so basically it's connected in one spot on the top and the bottom. What I want to have happen is I'm going to disconnect one of the pieces on the top or the bottom. I'm not going to have the piece sitting sideways and shove it through. You'll see it when we zoom in later. Anyways, so you can take this guy as well, which I honestly don't have room for that, but if I just hit it like that, knocked it right out. So that's, yeah, I've showed you all three ways, and feel free to do whatever works for you. So with a 2-gang box, it doesn't have the same type of knockout piece, and so I almost always use just a flathead screwdriver, and then I'm gonna just kind of push it forward. Once I know, basically I need to know what knockouts I need to use. Typically I'd be doing this later, but there's so little room that it's going to be way easier for me to just run my wire into the box right now. And so, because I didn't leave myself much room here, so I wanted to try to fit everything on here for you. So this is going to have one wire coming in, so we're going to go ahead and push that. These I always push from the back side forward. There we go. For the 2-gang boxes, for the single gangs you can do from either side, but 2 gangs I always push in the back. So we have one wire coming in here for power. We're going to take one wire out for power, but it's going to be a 3-wire for here. And then we have a 3-way here, and so we're going to run a 3-wire out of here. I think we're going to take power from here and hit the smoky with the hot side, not the switch side. There's 2 sides. One's a switched hot, the other's a normal hot. This GFCI is just going to be an on and off switch for me, basically. So don't worry about how I do that. I'll show you how I do it later, though. Go ahead and do a quick zoom in here. Hopefully you can see that. That's a little piece that I popped out. It's okay if you pop that whole piece out. It's not a problem. That is probably hard to see, but it has a little top and bottom connection piece on there. It's okay if you happen to pop the whole thing out. It's not going to matter. Just make sure you're putting a wire through it. That's pretty much it. As long as there's a wire going through the hole that it was in, you're fine. For a 3-way switch, I'll just explain it real quick. 3-way switch, we're going to have basically a 3-wire that goes from the 3-way to the 4-way, a 3-wire that goes from the 4-way to the other 3-way. On one end we want the power, which is going to be this end, and on the other end we want the switch leg. So I actually did not need another hole up here for the smoky. This piece is not completely broken off, so I'm just going to slide it right back to where it was at. Since I just kind of knocked out one little piece of it, if we knock the whole thing out, I generally just replace the whole box. So we're running power in here, but we don't actually need power for the light because that's coming off a switch leg. We don't need power for the 4-way because it's going to be a 3-wire. We don't need power for this 3-wire because it's going to have the switch leg that goes from here to here. So no power is needed on this side. All right, pull and wire. So if I'm going to make up this box and I'm just running wire from here to here, what I'm going to do is basically pick the middle of the box where I want the wire to be, and I'm going to do my best to show this to you. Probably wants to focus on my face. I'm just lightly going to pinch on the 12-gauge side, and then basically I just bend it to break the little edges off. Oh, I bend it to break the edges off, and you can see it just creates a little gap there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it where it would fit in the middle. I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. Quick pinch, bend the wire one way then the other, and we're going to go ahead and feed this up here. Normally I wouldn't do it quite like this, but the reason I'm doing it like this is because I put these boxes so close together. I don't even know if I have room to staple in here. Normally I want this sitting flat. Normally I have enough room to get it flat. But it's pinching down on it a little bit, and that's good enough for me. So we're going to leave those there. That's going to have, basically, we're going to be coming out of it with, believe it or not, a cut extension cord so that I can plug it in. That's what's going to happen. You can wire a shed with a cut extension cord as well, so if you need to move the shed, this will be just sitting outside. I suggest the weather resistant ones. This is just a standard one. So this will be coming in the bottom here. So I want at least, I believe code is 4 inches outside the box. I'm not that worried about that at this point. We're just gonna get ourselves at least 6 inches. So basically, for me, if I hold it like this, it's 6. I'm gonna have a little bit of sheathing inside the box. So cutting it right about 6 inches will give me about 8 inches of wire inside the box. Whenever cutting this stuff, you do not want to cut very much because it's so easy to cut that wire on the inside. You're just barely going to score it. And then you're basically just going to rotate around in a circle to get the rest of that off. Bring all my muscles today. There we go. Apparently I put this block in a horrible spot. All right, this side's done. We're going to go ahead and start working here next. Just a note, for this brand of wire, the sheathing is a little bit thicker and it's almost the same size as the 12-2 sheathing. And so I use the 12-2 for both the 12 gauge as well as the 14 gauge. There is another brand that has a thinner sheathing than the stuff I buy for the 14 gauge, and then I use the smaller cutter for that brand. Another thing to know is whenever I wire boxes, I always label what's the line and load side. I always carry a Sharpie with me when I'm running wire as well. Another handy tool. So basically I need to label what this is for myself. And so I'm just going to put P out for power out. All right, so that says power out. So the other side, which would generally be a 12-2 wire as well, is going to say power in. So we're going to label that. So power in, P-I-N. I always twist my line side so that way I know it's line and load side. The load side I leave straight wherever I know a GFCI is going to be at. So I twist the line side to say, hey, there's going to be a GFCI here. If I have line in and line out, I'll twist both sides so I know there's a GFCI. But both sides are going to go to the line side. The 12 gauge wire, I can only put 3 12-2 wires in this box illegally. So down here, I'm just going to put a P on this. So that way I know it's power. And we're going to go ahead and keep going here. Putting a switched outlet is not that common, and me having to explain everything I'm doing as I'm going is also not that common. So see how this is loose and it can move right here? That's exactly what you don't want. So even though it saved me quite a bit of effort, I'm going to still grab a hammer, hammer it down and give it a good tug. As long as it's not coming out, we're solid. Label that. Power coming out. We already know what that is. This can only be a power for a smoke detector, so I don't have to label it. Basically, you want to label where you have GFCIs. You want to label where on all of your switch boxes. Your outlets that are not GFCIs, they don't matter. because you're just putting standard outlets in, so you don't need to know what's what. So we need a wire from this light going down to this three-way, because it's going to be our switch leg. I generally do about, ideally, like 1.5 feet of wire coming out, up to 3 feet at the most, but 1.5 to 2 feet is what I try to aim for. If it's the last wire in a box, I'm fine doing, 10 inches of wire and just folding it in there, maybe 8. We're grabbing our 14.3 wire. Used to all be white for 14.3, and almost everything was white at one point, and then it was different colors before that. They even had like a fabric weird coating, but nowadays we have our blue for our 14.3. This is going to be a switched outlet. So because I'm going to have 2 3-wires in here, even though it's like, oh, I know what they go to, I'm still going to write what they are on them. And if you'll notice, when I wire boxes up, you can do whatever you want, but this is how I do it. I try to ideally have all my power sitting on the closest to the board. And then if I have switches, which this is a different situation, but this still has a power, I'll move my switches to where they line up inside the box. When I'm doing a whole house, I'll keep these just a pocket full in my back pocket while I'm pulling wire with the other things that I mentioned, cutters, hammer, things like that. And also, just to note, I often I just have like a little leather thing that attaches to my belt that just holds my hammer, so I don't have to wear my whole tool bags. Makes me go faster, less encumbered. I can just rock stuff out faster. All right, we're gonna go and label this. So we have our SL outlet. For this one is a switch leg outlet. This is a 3-way light. So all my boxes are currently set up how I would want it set up if I was wiring a house. What that means is they're set up sitting between 3/8 and 1/2 inch, sticking out here beyond the 2x4. So the reason they're sticking out beyond the 2x4 is because when sheetrock comes, one, I don't want them sticking out past the sheetrock. If it's sticking out past the sheetrock, then my switches are going to stick out. It's going to look really stupid. If they're sitting back a touch, 1/16, 1/8 of an inch, something like that, it's not going to matter at all. Just a heads up, when you're pounding these nails in, the grain of the wood will guide your box slightly back or forwards depending on where the grain is at. It often does that, and so you have to account for that when I have to account for that when I'm installing the boxes. So because there's a little, they're rounded on the edges, they're naturally going to sit back slightly. All right, so we have one more wire here, and then yeah, we'll be ready to make stuff up. Question people often ask is, why am I using 14 gauge wire for this stuff and 12 gauge wire for over here? Well, I put 80 lights on one circuit and not even used half of the watts available on that circuit. So you can put a lot of lights on one circuit. Outlets, the moment you stick something like a heater or like a space heater, a hair dryer, toaster, coffee pot, all of a sudden those are pulling an equal amount to 40 to 80 lights just for one of those items, sometimes more. Microwave, they're pulling more than half a circuit. So I'm immediately going to be jumping up to 12 gauge wire if I know that's going to happen. So for example, I was wiring a space for somebody that they wanted to use as an office, but they didn't want to have heat in it. It was like a shed type thing. And I was like, I'm immediately putting 12 gauge wire everywhere. And I gave him 2 circuits, one for heating and cooling for like a wall mounted unit that he wanted, and another one for his outlets. That way they were on a different circuit. But if he has a desktop could easily pull 1,000 watts. And that's basically on a 15 amp circuit would be more than half the circuit. But it's slightly less than half the circuit if you're on a 12 gauge with a 20 amp. So anyways, probably more than you needed to know, but I just want to throw that out there for you. We're going to end this video. Thanks a lot for watching. On the next video, we're going to start making up these boxes. And I need to go find one more plug to hook up to the bottom of this guy here. So thanks so much.